Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the Tune In Show, which is hosted by the Interfaith Temple. And I am Reverend Dr. Samora, and I am the director of the temple. And it's my privilege today to welcome Executive Director Dr. J. Speights of the new Seminary for Interfaith Studies. And so he's really great at introducing himself. He knows himself better than any of us do. So, what would you like to share about yourself today, Dr. J?
That's always an interesting question because it depends on my inner and qualitative state at any point in time. But today, and when I'm feeling most is I'm a grateful person to have been of service to this institution of ours for almost a decade and a half. It was a long, winding road cut through woods and over stone and mountains to get here. I had always felt a urging, and notice I didn't say call, to go into divine service since I was a young man, very young man, young boy actually. But I couldn't quite find my way to divine service through my faith tradition at that time, the one my parents chose for me, which was Catholicism. Most of us never really, well, many of us, I shouldn't say most, but many, significantly, many never assess or reassess or take time to think about their root faith tradition, the one they were born into and baptized into or initiated into. And I didn't do that, of course, until much later in life in a very intensive way. I had thought about it off and on, what I believed about Catholicism, what I didn't believe. But somewhere in my college years, I started to think seriously about it because I couldn't see how my Christian faith was the answer for my world of the wrongs and the injustice that I saw in the world and how I wanted to walk in the world. And it took me almost all of my adulthood to find my way to this interfaith path that I'm currently attuned to. That's the name of our
Yes,
first,
it
yeah, that
is.
I am attuned to. And I say attuned to because you really attune to a faith tradition. It should be based on your belief and your revelation from the divine mind and heart, which of course is God. And I am now teaching this interfaith approach, and it's a liberating approach. And what do I mean by that? I can hear some of you already saying, liberation theology. Well, theology is a word we don't use often at the seminary, but our liberating approach is this, that you can find faith, solace, wisdom, understanding, and healing in across faith traditions that call their adherents to live lives of truth, justice, compassion, light, and so many other the virtues that connect all of us that want to see people achieve their wholeness and fullness in life. And so that's a liberating approach. And you can glean from among these world traditions, their sacred rites, texts, rituals, and apply them in your life and to help you navigate down life's waters and to achieve your wholeness and fullness. On my way to getting here at the new seminary and becoming a minister or in divine service, I took many off ramps on my road. And for a great deal of my life, I was a political operative and a public affairs specialist. I lobbied, worked on Capitol Hill campaigns, and for government. And I think all of that put me in a mind frame where I could, through a very critical filter and lens, look at my faith path and the way I was walking in the world and to make a change and move in a different direction.
So, if you could share a bit about moving in a different direction, what would you say? Did you have a moment where you felt pulled towards working in a different way and being in service in a different way in your life? Was there a pivotal moment or anything that you could anchor that to?
Where there always were those moments. And sometimes you and I always call those the Apostle Paul moments. Some of mine were dramatic, life-threatening situations, to just finding yourself wondering, what the heck am I doing in this world? And what is my purpose here? And how can I best attune and find out what my gifts are and bring those out to the world? And I would say that I found myself in my late 40s and 50s feeling that time was running out. I didn't have the impact or make the statement that I wanted to about my life and in the world. And I was laying in bed one morning, and I didn't like the way the last 2 years of my life went. I didn't like the content, let's say that,
Mhm.
of my life. And I was tempted to go to Tacoma Park Temple, which is in Tacoma Park, Maryland, for a service. It just so happened that this was on a Sunday, and the Washington Redskins and Dallas Cowboys were playing, which is a very important Sunday in Washington. So my choices were this: Tacoma Park Chapel, where I felt I was going to get some kind of message from God, or the Washington Redskins and the Dallas Cowboys. And as I was doing my assessment or reflection on what I would do, the football game was going up like this. I was thinking about chicken wings and beers and the guys. And if Tacoma Park Chapel was going down like this, oh, I can go next Sunday. All of a sudden it went like this, because somehow I got this message that something would happen at church that was significant for me and that I should go. And I could catch the latter part of the game. So anyway, I went, and there was this fellow there named Reed Brown from the Arlington Metaphysical Chapel. And he is a clairvoyant, psychic, whatever you want to call him. And he was speaking to our congregation that morning. And when I walked in, they gave me two pieces of paper. It was called a billet. And they asked that you write the names of 3 people that transitioned on the paper and ask them a question. And now, at that time, there was only one person on the other side whose information I would absolutely trust about anything, and that was my grandfather, whom I'm named after. And I asked about the content of my question related to the content of my reflection that morning. What is happening what happened with the last 2 years of my life, and what's going to come in the future? What's my life going to look like? What am I doing wrong? And what change should I make? And so I didn't think that I would get chosen, because there were 100 plus people there. And lo and behold, I was the first or second person chosen. And the pastor, Jim Webb, picked my name, and they looked. So you don't write your name on it. I left that out. You wrote your initials and your date of birth. And he read JBS 2 11252. And he gave the billet to Jim Webb, and Jim Webb gave the billet to Jim Reed, and he put it on his head and held it and touched it. And then he said, "Say hello to me, or say good morning, so I can attune to your energy." And I said, "Good morning, Reverend." And he said, "There are a lot of people here that want to speak to you, but I have your grandfather, James, and he will speak for you." And Reverend Reed took on this persona of a older Southern black man. He's white. He sounded like a Floridian, like my father and my grandfather. And he said, "Son, don't judge the next 2 years of your life next few years of your life based on the last 2 years. Keep on going and pursuing the things you're thinking about, and everything will be okay." And I was thinking about ministry, and that affirmed it for me. And so afterwards, I saw Jim, and in his mind, he told me to go to All Faiths, but he said New Seminary. And so I signed up, went to the New Seminary. I carried around the application for about a year before I mailed it in. And then the following year, he said, "By the way, you enrolled in All Faith Seminary. How's it going?" And I said, "No, you told me to go to the New Seminary." I'd already been in the New Seminary for a year. And so that's how I found my way here into the path that I'm currently on. And from there, it just crystallized everything. And I like to say it began with a debate about a football game, chicken wings, and beer, and going to church. That could actually be a sermon.
I love it. That's really great. What I would really like you, if you can, is talk a little bit about what resonates for you in terms of the foundation of the new seminary and how it came to be, and why it would be meaningful for you at this point to hold and carry that legacy.
Well, two things come to mind. First, we have a great Genesis story. As you know, we were founded by Rabbi Joseph Gelberman, a Kabbalic rabbi from Hungary, and Swami Satchidananda. So let me talk about Rabbi Gelberman first. When he was a young boy, he was visited by an angel, and this angel told him that the prayer, from the ancient Hebrew tradition, the Shema, is that right? Shema, is incomplete, and that a line should be added to that prayer, which stated that God is the God of all the people, all the world. And Rabbi told his rabbi at that time about this visitation from the angel. And that rabbi told him to never mention it or speak of it again. And as a young boy, I had similar visitations. Luckily, I had a mother who allowed me to speak about those and counseled me on what it possibly could have meant. And believe me, I was never told to suppress it. And so Rabbi, as he got older, founded a new seminary, the Interfaith Seminary, the first interfaith seminary in the world, us, the new seminary. And I just think that visitation by the angel was his message to devote his life to bringing people together, to use religion as a way to tear down walls and build community and not to divide community. And I think we're doing a good job at expanding that vision and that mission today through our added programs, academic programs, the graduate degrees, expanding our ministry program to include more religions and outreach programs. And I think he would be proud. Swami Satchidananda, the other patriarch, I'm very proud to be in his lineage as well. And he was the guru of the Beatles. And he flew in on his helicopter to Woodstock. But in a more substantive way, he brought yoga to the Western Hemisphere, and he testified before Congress for school lunch programs. He was an activist. And the third thing I'd like to mention is a new seminary was started meeting in its formation years in 1979 and formally incorporated in 1981. And that's significant because those are the years that there was a retrenchment, much like today, on commitment to civil rights and justice and diversity and inclusion. All the things that the activism of the 60s had ushered in, there was then this onslaught and this effort to retrench them, to pull them back. And there was an upswing in the moral majority, the moral right, the evangelical movement, and all of those things, much like what we're facing today. And as you know, we have 6 cornerstones, and one of those cornerstones of the new seminary is sacred activism. That you have to look at the world and see the injustice and the pain and hurt. Howard Thurman said that the 3 fundamental questions that we should all ask: what do you think about God? Where do you stand? And what do you see from where you stand? You answer those 3 questions, and that leads you to do something about what you see from where you stand, right where you are in your ministry, as you stand, where you are in your community, in your hospice, in your hospital, in your church, in your school, wherever you are. Address the injustice, address the pain and hurt. When we think of activism, we think that we have to join this big mass movement. It's everybody being vigilant about addressing the inequities. And taking a step forward to make sure that people can live their lives free of fear, judgment, and harm, express their cultural and religious traditions, and seek a path where they can fulfill their lives and bring their gifts out to the world.
That's beautiful. And, speaking about what the climate is of today, what do you believe Rabbi Gelberman and Swami Satchidananda would be bringing forth right now in these times that also draw in the spirit of, how we are all connected? Because right now, of course, the message, you know, in the media or just overall is that we're all, divided. So what do you believe would resonate for somebody young right now in terms of, the vision of the seminary?
Well, I think let's talk about Swami first. I think Swami um, is speaking through current generations
Mm.
with his message of finding out who am I, as he would say in that accent, who am I, who am I, and how finding out who you are, what is your divine higher self, and then how does that divine higher self integrate into the rest of the global community, your community, where you are, and bring that higher self to bear on whatever is wrong with your community, how you can help your community and help others find who they are. Rabbi, let's talk. He said he would marry a flea, two fleas if he could. So he saw marrying people of different faiths and cultural traditions, that mingling of that diverse pot of people melding together and fusing. And from there comes a brandness, a oneness of humanity. Let's say a oneness that just is a healing balm and agent, because people that are that understand each other and seek each other out and marry and build families, diverse families. That is a beautiful thing, and that is what I think heals the world. Recognizing that there's no when you marry, and you how many thousands of weddings you've done, when you marry somebody from another faith tradition, which really wasn't prevalent in his times. I mean, considering that he was born before the turn of the last century, right? I mean, not last. I mean, oh, 2 centuries ago.
Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't prevalent at this time. So that during his life and time, so he was really a forward thinker in
Hmm.
that respect. And I think that he would just tell people to mingle, to learn each other, to don't stand behind the walls that block off engagement and encountering the other. I think Howard Thurman said that a community dies, it stifles when it fails to grow, when it fails to include people, it has to constantly expand. And that's the gift of diversity, the blessings. They call those the gifts of diversity, the blessings of diversity. And I think that that's what a rabbi would speak about, the blessings of the gifts of diversity. Love who you want to love, marry who you want to marry, live your life the way you want to live it. Don't let religion be a shackling bond that prevents you from expanding your horizons and meeting the other as a brother and sister.
That's beautiful. So in terms of the direction that the seminary is going, going back to that moment when you thought about that forward, vision, when you had that light that shined about your ministry, what do you see for the future of the seminary and how it serves humanity in its diversity?
Well, first, I see you at the leadership one day
Well,
based
thank you.
on a terrific job that you're doing, not only with the seminary, but also with the Interfaith Temple. But I see us continuing to grow our education programs. And it's these education programs that have really put our people out into mainstream positions and teaching at universities. And in hospice, chaplains in hospice, in agencies, in hospitals. That's important work. And those
Mm-hmm.
were avenues that were closed off to interfaith ministers when I first started going to the seminary. I was the first interfaith minister at, well, I'm not going to call myself an interfaith minister. I was the first minister from our seminary to work as a chaplain at my hospital. And I was challenged. I was constantly underestimated, but I was prepared. And that's the key right there. We're going to continue to prepare our students to step fully and wholly in the mainstream ministry,
Mm-hmm.
to bring the message of our liberating approach to spirituality, our liberating spiritual approach.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's needed more than ever because with our liberating spiritual approach is the fact that the other is your brother and sister, that they don't have to pray like you, earn money like you. They're all entitled to live their life to their fullest as long as they don't deny you the right to express your faith and cultural traditions. And that's the challenge that we're in right now. That you have a faction, not a faction, but a great deal of people globally that think that they have the absolute truth and the absolute way of how one should live their life. There was this old preacher, and I think, and I don't know who said it, but I heard him say it many times. I just can't think of the name. I'm too busy trying to get to heaven to worry about you getting there. I think he
Yeah.
said it with more oomph and I'm too busy trying to get to heaven to worry about you getting there.
Well, I want to go back to one thing you said a moment ago about when you first said I was the first interfaith minister, and then
Mm-hmm.
you corrected yourself and you said, wait a minute, I was a minister with the, with using or from this interfaith sort of establishment. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people would like to know, what does interfaith mean? Like, why is this term attached to ministry?
Well, it could mean many things. And obviously, in the past, it meant it was synonymous to interdenominational.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not one to play alphabet soup, and I think that's what's going on in our movement right now. Some people want to use the word interspiritual, interfaith. We were born an interfaith organization. I'm not going to get rid of that word. But for me, interfaith simply means that you have done a certain type of work, and the first step in that work is to have an inner dialogue about what you think about God, how you commune to God, how do you take what you've learned in that communion with God and express it through your life and in the world.
It's well said. And once again, I want to remind everyone that I am Reverend Dr. Samora. I'm the director for the Interfaith Temple, and I'm here interviewing and having a wonderful conversation with Reverend Dr. J. Speights, who is the executive director of the new Seminary for Interfaith Studies. So before we wrap things up, I would love to also talk about your journey a little bit. And I know the Washington Post did an article about you, and I would love for you to share with our audience a bit about what
Well,
happened
that.
and what that was about.
Well, the Washington Post, CBS News, Tamron Hall, Philadelphia Inquirer,
To name a few.
National Public Radio. What Dr. Samora is referring to is that I, through a DNA test, it was determined that I was related to an ancient royal African family in the Kingdom of Aladan, Benin, West Africa. And I flew over there and well, before I flew over there, they told me that I was a prince and that I should come and be crowned and receive my ancient title, land, and so forth. And so I'm now also Prince Bida Khan Deka of the Kingdom of Alada. Benin, West Africa. For those of you that don't know anything about the country of Benin, it was formerly called Dahomey, and my kingdom founded the Dahomey Empire, or the Dahomey Empire was founded out of my kingdom. For a more current reference in terms of what the Dahomey Empire was, I refer to the movie The Woman King, which is my family. And it was a delight to do that. It was a blessing. And I'm still trying to integrate all that into my life.
And how did it feel to find this out, after you've, lived, you've had a substantial career in many different ways, and here you are, your children are raised, and then you come to find out this information. Like, how did that, shift things for you?
Well, it completed the puzzle that was me. And most African Americans are a puzzle because they don't know, they have a lot of pieces of themselves missing, knowledge of their self missing. We don't know where we came from. We can say we're African American, but that's a huge continent. Where in Africa? And so the blessing for me is that I can now go to the map and put my finger on a specific place and say my family originated from here. When I was at Howard University, I used to wear African jewelry. That's when it was all in the bangles and the beads and the dashikis. And I was just wearing African attire. This piece of, okay, anyway, I have a piece of jewelry on my wrist. It was made by women in my village.
Hmm.
I have outfits made by artisans in my village. I have baskets made by artisans in my village, family members. That is empowering. Not only that, but my family is one of the caretakers of the ancient African tradition called Vodun,
Mm.
not to be confused with the television creation of voodoo with the witch doctor and zombies and all that. Vodun is a religion much like Christianity. It has a pantheon of gods or saints or entities that are in charge of aspects of creation and a divine creator. And you could even say, well, you can say with certainty that Vodun is older than Christianity. And so that is, for me, the most important thing, that I can speak of African gods and deities and know that I have a connection there. When I was in a sacred forest, for those of you that are called Zen Valley, for those of you that were Game of Thrones fans, this
Hmm.
sacred forest, the caretakers of this sacred forest are called Zangbetos, which means night watch. So I was blessed purified in the forest of the night watch. And I'm bent over and they're praying over me in this circle. And they read this prayer called Bookman's Prayer. And it was a prayer that was said the night before the Haitian Revolution.
Right.
And the hero of the Haitian Revolution, Toussaint Overture, would be my cousin. And in saying this prayer and returning, essentially the prayer said, let us turn away from the God of the white man and return to the gods of our ancestors. And with that prayer, it empowered them to go on and defeat the most powerful army in the world at that time, which was Napoleon's army. And that forced Napoleon to divest his holdings in the Western Hemisphere and sell them to the United States. And that was the Louisiana Purchase. So in a way, I can say that my family and the religion of my family actually played a role in shaping what the United States has become. For those of you that don't know what the Louisiana Purchase is, that was all the land west of the Mississippi up to, I forget the point, but most of the United States, from sea to shiny sea.
It's
Not
pretty
to be,
profound. Yes, but pretty profound.
Thank you.
And so with that, how does that shape you as a leader in an interfaith world? How does that shape you?
Well, if you look at the young Catholic boy who didn't have knowledge of, who saw pictures and images of gods that looked nothing like him, that was in a religion that basically said he was lesser than, and to grow in to know that there are entities that look like you. I mean, I don't believe any divine entity looks like anybody. I think we try to assign human characteristics to the divine anyway. I think it's deeper than that. I think it's more profound than that. But to know that there's a faith tradition that is unique to your ethnicity, to your ancestry. Think about it. Who did the enslaved folks from Africa pray to when they came over on the slave ships? They were not praying to Jesus. They were not praying to, some prayed to Allah, some did, but for the most part, they prayed to their African deities. And you know what? The majority of them survived. The majority of them thrived, meaning lived, to have descendants. And so it's empowering to know that your faith tradition, no matter who you are or where you come from, is enough for you to find wisdom, and healing. And finding that wisdom and healing in your faith tradition should allow you to understand that there's wisdom and healing in all faith traditions. So why not familiarize yourself with them? Why not, as the young kids would say, sample them with reverence and see, you might find something that works for you, works better for you. And I have found aspects of African spirituality that better inform me of who I am and what I am and how I'm supposed to walk in the world than in any of the Western traditions or other ones that I've studied. But it doesn't mean I'm exclusively an adherent to African spirituality now. I'm beyond being an adherent to any brand or any form of spirituality. I think all the higher aspects of spirituality are present in all. You just have to look for them and familiarize yourself with them. You could say that, for lack of a better term, I have stepped into the mind and heart of the divine consciousness, and all that wisdom is there. But you can read these books and you can find parts and aspects of them and put it all together, and you can just realize it's just as the Adhan says in Islam, there is only God. There's only God, and there's only the divine. Let's say that the word God is something we could discuss a different day, but there's only the divine mind and heart, and we're all capable of stepping into it. And once we step into it, then that's how we shift and change. But it's hard work to get there. Hard work to get there. I hope that answered your question.
I believe so. And so if I was listening to this conversation and I was interested in joining or looking for a program where I could become more of more of what a, a more expansive version of myself so that I could go out into the world and do things that, help people or just, make the world a better place. Why would I choose the new seminary?
Our focus is on the ministry of presence, not the ministry of the book or a book or the way. The ministry of presence, a way, finding a way, leading to your way. We want you to bring your as me presence, your I am presence, as God created, as you were created, out to the world through your ministry. It is what made Jesus, why do so many people follow the teachings of Jesus besides, I mean, let's not talk about the forced conquering empire religion, that Christianity became, but just take the words of Jesus. Why do people find inspiration and healing in these words? Because Jesus was one of a kind. The same with Buddha, Muhammad. They were way showers, they were unique. And all their simple message to each of us is you're unique. God created you one of a kind, you're supposed to be wholly vested in that uniqueness. And in that uniqueness, you find out who you are, what you are, and what your gifts are, and how you bring those to the world. So I would choose the new seminary because we allow you to be you. And I went to another seminary, a mainstream seminary, that you're not allowed to be you. You can't say what you want. You can't say what you believe. But we have no company line except that you come as you are. You come as you are. And whatever that is, we want you to go within and assess that and find out what that means and bring that out to the world. Anybody can sit down and read a book and say, and Jesus said this, and now I'm going to turn to this source, and he's going to tell you what Jesus said. It's like watching CNN. The president gives a speech, and then 20 people come on and tell you what the president just said. We heard him. We hear the words of Jesus. We hear the words of Muhammad. We hear the words of Buddha. Let them sit with you and use your unique filter to see what they mean to you. Christ is not, the life and times of Jesus don't relate to the life and times of Jay Speights. What I can do is take his words, an example of how Jesus lived his life, and glean from that the things that are important, the things that are inspirational, and apply them in my life and bring them forward in a contemporary context.
Well, thank you. And the thing is that for many people that are interested in this path, a lot of times they don't even know how much they can impact different careers and different settings. So could you just say a little bit about what many of the graduates have gone on to accomplish as a
Sure.
result of, being in this program?
Yes, we have. I'm proud of our graduates, and I should say that. Um, I think chaplaincy, we've had a major impact. I would say that in the last 4 or 5 years, we have experienced a tremendous upswing in actually placing chaplains into national certification, which means they are qualified and meet the standards to work in hospitals and hospice. So whenever they bless someone in an end of life service or inspire someone to go within and find that aspect of that healing agent within, that's good work. Also, we have 4 or 5 teaching at college universities and teaching on interdisciplinary units in major hospitals, and many serving in congregations. Right now we have a student that's a past what 3 student pastors right now. One of a Unitarian church, one is with the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Ben with the San Francisco Night Ministry. We have Reverend Sharon that graduated 1 or 2 years ago. She's a pastor of a church now. And this is all good work. And that liberating message goes with them, because it's one thing you're going to have that message, is you're going to have that liberating approach down pat and what it means, because you're going to have internalized it, because we address it and present it in so many different ways. So our people are getting out there, they're earning money as ministers, they're working, and they're fulfilled as ministers. And that's important. That's very important. We train people for professional ministry using their authentic and unique presence.
And I
And
can
there you are.
I can attest to that.
Thank you. Just as
Um,
I am, I come to thee.
so
Uh,
before we go, is there any last resonating attunement words that you would like to share with
yes,
our audience?
you are a glaring example, a shining example of what our seminary produces.
Hmm,
And I would ask you all, you can Google us, but Google Reverend Dr. Samora to look at the fantastic work that she's done through her music, through her wedding ministry, through her coaching ministry, and as the shepherd of the Interfaith Temple.
thank you.
And you'll see why people come to us.
Well, I can say that Dr. J is quite a visionary. He looks beyond what the eye and the mind's eye can see. I've watched him speak life into many people that come in the program, don't know what they're doing. They just, landed there. They felt like they were supposed to enroll and sign up. And it's through the leadership and mentorship and divine guidance that I believe has really helped many people blossom in a way that they never even anticipated when they, filled out that application. So I thank you for, speaking that life into me also and seeing my ability. Um, so with that, hold on, it's a little noisy out here. I don't know if you can hear it. But with that, I want to thank you for spending a little time with me this afternoon so that we could, share our message and share what we're doing out here, but just so that people could have a little behind the curtain look at you and who you are and what you bring to this movement and to this moment that we're all of us are out here really wanting to have purpose and really looking for a way to serve, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. And always thank you for the wonderful work you do. And thank you for thinking enough of me to have this interview. I felt like I was on MSNBC.
Well, I hope all of you look forward to future episodes. This is our first one. Once again, I'm Reverend Dr. Samora, and this is Reverend Dr. J. Speights. He is the executive director for the new seminary of Interfaith Studies. And if you are at all interested in our program, I will have more information after this video. So thank you.
Thank you. Peace and blessings to you.
Peace and blessings to you.